Our protagonist was standing at a traffic light, waiting for it to turn green so he could cross the road. While waiting, he was scrolling through his phone and stumbled across an old game that he used to play called Brave and Blade. He immediately remembered the game's poster and how, despite being made by a big company, the game didn't see much success at its release. The game was seen as innovative as it was played with special joysticks. Our protagonist was a true gamer and got addicted to the game. If he remembered correctly, that was the very last time he had ever played. As he looked up from his phone, he saw a woman about to be hit by a truck. The truck was about to strike. Our protagonist dropped his phone and instinctively pushed the woman out of harm's way. Although it wasn't too obvious, the truck ran him over. Our protagonist realized that as his consciousness was fading, and he hoped that the woman was okay. His very last thoughts were about his favorite game and how he wished he had spent more time playing it. A voice called out that his wish would be granted. Our protagonist woke up with a sword in his hands. He was aware of the fact that he had fallen victim to a truck, but now he was in a cave that looked way too familiar to him. Even the sword in his hands was something he had seen before. When he saw his reflection, he realized that he had been reincarnated as Rex Torin, one of the characters from the Brave and Blade game. Rex took his time to think about the possibility of him being reincarnated, and he couldn't understand why he was reincarnated as Rex, because he becomes useless later on in the game. He was a character that helps new players when they start the game. However, Rex didn't want to complain, and he wanted to confirm his doubts. He first thought about his whereabouts, and he came to a conclusion that he was in the first dungeon called the Cave of Trial, and the great city of Ash should be nearby. He was under the impression that returning to town should be his top priority. However, he suddenly recalled that the town was about to be attacked and destroyed by monsters, which was something that had also occurred in the game during his time there. Rex explained that the game provided players with the opportunity to select from 7 distinct narratives, and based on the appearance of the game, the narrative in which he found himself was the one in which the main protagonist formed a party with 3 stunning young women. In the event that they had entered the Cave of Trial dungeon, the demon seal would have been broken due to the hero's exceptional status, and the dungeon boss would have materialized in front of them. They were going to be rescued by Rex, who happened to be there by chance. A subsequent occurrence was the destruction of the city, which resulted in the city becoming a base of operations for monsters. Even its name was changed to Monster City of Ash, and given that moniker, Rex reasoned to himself that if he fled to another city, he would be safe. However, he then realized that this would result in the death of the hero, which could potentially cause the entire world to descend into chaos. Rex was only able to come up with one solution after taking everything into consideration, and that was to prevent the hero from triggering the event before he could do so. In spite of the fact that his actions might cause the story to be ruined, he couldn't care less about that because he was just a salaryman and fighting wasn't his strong suit. And not only was he no longer a salaryman, but he is now a tutorial non-player character. It is the worst thing that could happen to you when you die, and you think that if you go to hell, you will be burned in fire for the rest of your life. On the other hand, you are going to be transformed into a strange non-player character, NPC, in a video game. Certainly, here is your text with the following corrections made to the grammar, punctuation, and overall coherence. Rex quickly ran to the final location in the dungeon, where he finally found the hero's party. At that moment, they were on the verge of making contact with a door that would set off an event. Rex yelled out for them to calm down and stop. When the hero's party turned around, they were taken aback. Some of Rex's ideas and thoughts started to be questioned. The protagonist disregarded him. In response to the hero's actions, the mage of the party, Nuku, expressed his regret. In addition to the fangirl, who was a healer named Mana, the hero, who was a knight named Rad, was also present at the party. Planner was the last member of their group, and he was a reserved elf archer. In addition to introducing himself, Rex cautioned them about the perilous nature of the dungeon and hinted that the monsters that had been sealed could potentially be released. He suggested that they take a retreat. The warning that Rex had given was met with skepticism from Rad, and Planner suggested that Rex was only speaking loudly to avoid drawing attention to his shortcomings. As they started to argue, Rex became aware that the members of the party did not get along very well with one another. After expressing regret for their actions, Nuku thanked Rex for escorting them out of the dungeon and apologized to him for their behavior. While they were on their way out, they came across some goblins. At the same time that Rad was eager to fight, Rex was eager to test his own abilities. He had the ability to see the status windows of the monsters, which felt like a form of cheating. In spite of Rad's persistent efforts, Rex insisted on taking care of the goblins on his own. Rex didn't want to reveal his secret, so he simply told Nuku that there are complex arts, and she was amazed with the entire system. He quickly killed the first goblin with a normal slash, and then he realized that Rex didn't want to reveal his secret. As soon as they emerged from the dungeon, they witnessed the city of Ash engulfed in flames, and it dawned on Rex that the city would be pillaged in each and every one of the multiple narratives. He was sorry that he had not been able to anticipate that happening. They witnessed a demon that was on the verge of devouring a girl who was lying on the ground, and Rex immediately recalled that particular occurrence from the game. He did not waste any time and began rushing towards the demon. It occurred to him that just a few moments ago, he had been killed by Truck for rescuing a young woman, and now he was doing the same thing once more. He thought to himself. However, he convinced himself that he would be able to defeat the gargoyle without any difficulty. Utilizing his divine thrust, he was able to successfully pierce the gargoyle's heart. The game mechanics, which he could recall with great clarity, continued to function exceptionally well. When he descended into a crouching position to check on the young lady, she addressed him by his name as if she was aware of his identity. It was then that Rex recalled that the girl who had been attacked by the demon was his younger sister, Rosilia. In the game, she would tell him about the destruction of the city. Before she took her own life, she would advise him and the hero's party to flee the area. On the other hand, Rex was not going to allow the same thing to occur once more. He retrieved a healing potion from his inventory and applied it liberally to her wounds, covering them completely. During their conversation, Rad informed Rex that they were in a precarious situation and that the hero's party desired to return to the city. The attempt that Rex made to convince them that it would be too late and that they would not be able to save anyone was unsuccessful. Mana's hometown was the city in question, and Rad was not going to take that into consideration because all of Mana's friends and even her family were present. Mana, on the other hand, was aware that Rex was correct, and she concurred with him that they needed to flee the environment. However, it was finally time for Rex to consider their choices. Amina was the name of a fishing village located to the north, and Rishima was the name of a small village located to the east. In addition, Rex was unable to recall the results of either of the decisions. They would be ambushed by a group of gargoyles if they decided to go to Rishima, and regardless of how hard Rex fought, he would not be able to protect the three girls from the hero's party. To the east. In addition, Rex was unable to recall the results of either of the decisions. They would be ambushed by a group of gargoyles if they decided to go to Rishima, and regardless of how hard Rex fought, he would not be able to gargoyles if they decided to go to Rishima, and regardless of how hard Rex fought, if they decided to go to Rishima, and regardless of how hard Rex, as a result, they would end up being killed. If they decided to travel to Amina, they would come face to face with the final boss of the game, and Rex would make the ultimate sacrifice in order to ensure that the hero's party could reach the village without any danger. Both of the choices had disastrous consequences, and Rex was torn between having to choose between them. At the same time that everyone was waiting for his call, Rex made the decision to go with something completely different because he was aware of the outcomes of the two distinct options. They were informed by him that they were going to return to the cave entrance. In response to Rad's inquiry about what would take place in the event that the entrance was blocked off, Rex explained that everything would be fine because the dungeon in question was connected to another high-level dungeon known as the Winged Dragon's Pathway. In spite of the fact that the hero's party was taken aback by the path they had taken, Rex cautioned them to remain vigilant because they were going to come face to face with the Wyvern's nest in a very short amount of time. When the hero's party learned that they were going to come face to face with a wyvern, they became extremely terrified. Rat made a remark about how it might be a good idea for them to leave the dungeon as soon as they were able to. Despite the fact that they were getting closer to the exit, Rex told them to hold off for a little while longer because he recalled something from the game, and he hoped that it was still the same in real life. After conducting a search of the area with his Rogue Eyes ability, he discovered what he was looking for, a liquid substance that was lying on the ground. As he gathered it, Rex stooped down to work. At the same time, he cautioned the group to be careful with their movements because the liquid contained a poisonous substance. Rad was at a loss to comprehend the reason behind Rex's practice of gathering something that was poisonous. According to Rex, the mysterious liquid was harmful to them when it came into contact with their skin. However, if you were to drink it, it would increase your stats, and as a result, it would be beneficial for them to engage in combat with a more powerful monster. Despite the fact that the liquid was poisonous, Rad was still unable to comprehend how that could be considered a positive thing. Rex explained that he was also collecting the healing phantom dust, which would eliminate the adverse effects that were occurring. Those were things that Rad had never heard of before, and Rex explained that they were extremely valuable and that they needed to make use of everything that was available to them if they wanted to continue living. After giving it some thought, Rad came to the conclusion that his mind was obsessed with the idea of escaping, and that he had never given any consideration to the possibility of getting ready for the long haul. He took note of the fact that Rex had left his sword behind while he was gathering those materials, and he picked it up and handed it to Rex, explaining that it was not a prudent decision to leave it behind while they were situated in hostile territory. Rex concurred with him, and he immediately started making Rad feel bad by asking him if he was envious of his sword. This infuriated Rad because it was not the case that he was jealous of his sword. On the other hand, that is a very accusatory question to submit. On the surface, Rex joked and said that Rad could have his sword if he were to pass away, but on a deeper level, he was determined to do everything in his power to prevent the future from becoming a reality. After what seemed like an eternity, they were finally able to emerge from the dungeon. Rex turned around to check if any monsters were following them, and it appeared that they were safe for the time being. When Nuku tried to explain that he hadn't really done anything special, Mana made a remark about how no one would think of going back into the dungeon. Nuku thanked Rex because he had saved them with his decision on the other hand. Even Rad acknowledged him by stating that he was not an A-rank adventurer for no reason at all. The fact that they were able to survive and complete the first event in the game without losing anyone was a source of happiness for Rex. Furthermore, he was relieved that he was able to avoid the terrible potential outcomes for the time being. When Plana became aware of something, she informed Rex that they were being pursued by something that was coming from above. Just as Rex was raising his head to see what it was that was following them, something crashed into the ground in front of them, causing the ground to split. Rex thought to himself that they would be able to defeat it if it was just a single. However, just as Rex was raising his head to see what it was, the ground began to split. Clouds of smoke and dust encircled the monstrosity. Rex was able to determine what it was by utilizing his ability, and he couldn't believe what he saw. In front of them was a Doom Demon that was 60 levels old and had some pretty impressive statistics. In reality, that was the monster that was responsible for Rex's death in the game, and from that point on, he was going completely insane as a result of it. Rex thought to himself how it was impossible to escape certain EV events, no matter which decision he made. He remembered how he was completely defenseless against the Doom Demon in the game. So Rex handed Rosilia to Nuku and told the hero's party to go to the nearest city to call for help while he was going to stay behind to fight the monster on his own. Rad commented on how he would probably die if he fought the monster alone. Plana shouted out how she would definitely come back with reinforcements and they're going to save Rex. Yes, Rad and Nana stayed with Rex as they decided that they were going to help him fight off the Doom Demon. At first they thought they were no match for the monster, but Rex realized that he had the mysterious liquid and the healing phantom dust in his inventory, which just might help him win the fight. He told Rad and Mana to stand to the side and watch him fight the monster for 5 minutes. Rex said something that was true for every gamer, especially the Dark Souls players. He had memorized the monster's movement pattern as he had seen it more than he had seen the faces of his parents. When the monster used one of his attacks, Rex was able to dodge without much problem. But then when he attacked it, he realized that his attacks weren't actually dealing much damage. The Doom Demon's stats were much higher than Rex's, but he wasn't going to give up as he used parry to block yet another attack. He thought he would have some time to think about his strategy, but the monster started channeling an AoE attack which he couldn't parry. The Doom Demon used his wave thrust and Rex couldn't dodge it in any way. He thought that the best thing to do would be to use his own art to try and cancel the attack. His plan seemed to have worked and Rex immediately dashed to the side and used his divine thrust to attack the Doom Demon. That looked like it had dealt some damage and Rad was simply amazed by how well Rex fought. The monster attacked him back, but Rex was able to dodge its attack and shoot one of his, which ended up missing. Rad notified Rex that his attack hadn't hit the target, but Rex smiled and said how that was perfectly fine as he started using something called over art, which completely shocked Rad as he could see 2 art symbols being used at the same time, and he never thought that that was possible as he had never seen that before. Rex used his VS Slash, and that attack clearly hit the target and reminded the Doom Demon of his ex cheating on him, and he let out a painful roar. I'm joking, the attack hurt him badly so he let out a painful roar, but you know, maybe a cheating X hurts more. His over-art skill allowed him to double one of his arts, but it used double the mana points. However, Rex knew a simple trick that allowed him to exploit that with his manual execution, and it felt like a cheat. Basically, combining those two skills allowed Rex to deal damage to the Doom Demon, whom he wasn't able to scratch in the game. However, Rex was also getting tired, and he realized that he maybe won't be able to hold on until the end of the fight. But it seemed that he remembered something, and when Rad and Mana called out to him, he had a smile on his face. He shouted out how he wasn't going to allow the monster to get anywhere near them, and Rad thought to himself how if their lives were some kind of a story, he was certain that Rex would be the one that was called the hero. And Rad, my bro, you have no idea how right you are. And actually, this reminds me of the opening scene of Tokyo Duel manga, where we see a girl lying down all beaten up, almost dead. Scene of Tokyo Duel. Rex started running at the monster as he prepared his final attack, which he thought would be enough to finish the monster. After casting his 7-claw art, he pushed the Doom Demon backwards. He wasted no time as he immediately used his over-art skill to cast his square cross and immediately doubled it with Tree Edge, which caused significant damage to the Doom Demon. He had a happy face as he was certain that he had won, but right after that, he started coughing up blood. Rad and Mana were completely terrified as they saw Rex's torso pierced with the monster's arm. Rex thought to himself how this scenario was practically the same as the one in the game, and as he was falling to the ground, he thought to himself how it was impossible for him to win. It seemed that no matter how hard he tried, he would always reach the same fate. Normally, the game was going to end when the main character died, but Rex thought to himself how he wasn't the main character in this story. His consciousness started to fade out, and his last thoughts were that the Doom Demon was going to be defeated by Rad and his party. When Rex died, he actually died. Rad and Mana were extremely saddened, and the monster turned towards them, and now it was their turn to do something. Rad felt something shoot right beside his ear, and it was one of Plana's arrows. She had returned and she had brought help. Nuku was there with her as well, but both of them were paralyzed when they saw Rex's lifeless body in a pool of blood. The Doom Demon spread its wings and it looked like he was about to fly away. Rad said how he was going to provoke the monster so the others could shoot it down with their magic attacks. Rad knew very well that he wasn't a hero, but he couldn't help but think of how heroic and courageous Rex just was, and that was actually something that he admired all of his life, and that was the stuff he read in fairy tales. Rad was moved when Rex put his life on the line to protect them, and even though he was aware of the fact that he was simply an ordinary guy, he decided that he was going to act as the hero just for that occasion. Rad rushed out at the Doom Demon, and after swinging his sword just once, the monster caught him and started pressing his body in its fist. Rad shouted how they needed to shoot their spells immediately, and they shouldn't care about the fact that he was in the line of fire because even though the monster was wounded, it was still able to kill thousands of people. Nuku, Plana, and Mana were completely against that idea because they couldn't get themselves to shoot when their party leader was in the way. But something unexpected happened. The monster was pierced with a sword instead of a magic attack, and Rex stood there victorious. Rad was really happy to see Rex, but he couldn't simply look at him without saying anything, so he told him that he was late and called him a hero. Rex simply smiled, but he thought to himself how he never thought that he would experience death twice in such a short period. Mana and Plana came running to them, and they were really happy to see that both of them were alive. However, no one could actually understand how Rex survived that, as they clearly saw him die. So Rex explained that it was because of the items he had used before the fight. The mysterious liquid buffed up his stats, but the side effect was that they would plummet after 10 minutes. The healing phantom dust negated those side effects. However, the healing phantom dust worked in a way that returned the user to his or her state of 5 minutes before consuming the item. So it basically reversed his state to the one before his death, and that's how Rex was able to come back to life after having died. Rex thought to himself how that item wasn't that useful in the game because if the main character died, the game would end no matter what, so it didn't really work like it did on him just a couple of moments ago. Rex gambled his life on the possibility of the item working on him, and he thanked God for being reincarnated as a side character. Just then, they heard a voice from the skies, and it seemed like a lady's voice. It tried communicating with them. The sky even gained the outlines of a woman, and the voice added how an evil lord called Rosilia, that was sealed for over 1,000 years, was about to be revived. Nuku and Rad were disturbed, But Rex, Mana, and Plana acted calm when the voice told them that Rosilia's plan was to take control over the entire world. The voice pleaded for their help as it seemed that they would be strong enough for the task of destroying special status. Rex thought to himself that even though he managed to avoid dying then, he was still weak, and he knew for a fact that there were even stronger monsters than the Doom Demon they just fought against. Rex knew that his task would be to become stronger and to destroy all of the statues and kill the monsters that would get in their way. But he joked how he was simply going to retire and let the main character take all the responsibility. Nuku commented how Rex looked calm, and it seemed that everyone else shared her opinion. Rex thought how he would always be ready to help, but he wasn't really happy with the idea of him putting his life in danger to save the world, as he was simply a side character. His first goal was to earn money because everything was easier once you are financially stable. Rex decided that he was going to use his game knowledge to exploit all the bugs that he had discovered. Rad also commented how Rex's determination to save the world was stronger after hearing the words from the skies. But Rex had something completely else on his mind, and he was actually going to start his journey depending on others, as he is not the hero. The era of peace had come to an end ever since the day that the Lady of Salvation had revealed herself to the world, which was the 10th day of the 10th month of the year 663. Since that time, the era of peace had reached its conclusion. All the people's hopes were placed in courageous and powerful adventurers, with the intention of destroying the 12 special status opportunities. After a couple of days had passed, Rad was working on his source and the application of arts in the city of Frilia. He exerted a great deal of effort in an attempt to replicate the moves that Rex had utilized in his fights, but he was unable to comprehend how Rex was able to execute such maneuvers. Rad made an effort to think about everything in a sequential manner, and he started by going back to the very beginning. He reflected on the fact that people were endowed with arts, and that these arts could be activated automatically if the individual simply thought about them, or if they imbued their weapons with their magic. As soon as he laid eyes on Rex, however, he realized that this was not the case with his abilities. After imbuing his weapons with his magic, it appeared that he was able to swing his sword in the manner that he desired without any restrictions, and Rad was curious about what would occur if he attempted to trace the movement pattern of one of his arts, employing magic, and seeing what the results would be. In addition, when he attempted to carry out that instruction, he failed miserably, just as he had failed his most recent examination in school. Despite the fact that Rad was well aware of his failure, he couldn't stop thinking about how Rex was able to wield his sword in such a manner while it was carrying a significant amount of his magical power. In addition, the more he thought about him, the more he found himself thinking about how incredible Rex was. In the later hours of that day, Rex made his way to Rad's room and informed him that he had a question for him. Rad chose to leave the house wearing only his underwear, which barely covered his private parts, because he believed that it was something of great significance. To borrow some money from him, however, was all that Rex wanted to do. Rex began pleading with Rad in a manner that was reminiscent of a gambling addict. Rad told Rex to wait while he hid behind his doors. Rad was somewhat taken aback by this. Rad was aware that rank adventurers were paid significantly more than other adventurers, and the fact that Rex was a rank adventurer meant that he ought to have a great deal more money than Rad itself. However, this was not the case. Furthermore, Rex proceeded to share his story with him. Because Rex was unable to stop thinking about his 2 deaths, he decided to take a stroll through the streets of the city in order to clear his mind. Additionally, while he was out and about, he happened upon a store that was extremely uncommon and was known as the elusive casino. Instantaneously, he recalled how other players had written on the forums that if anyone were to find out about it at an early stage in the game, they should immediately spend all of their money inside. Forums that if anyone were to find out about it at an early stage in the game, they should immediately spend all of their money inside. Forums that if anyone were to find out about it at an early stage in the game, they should immediately spend all of their money inside. Forums that if anyone were to find forums that if anyone were to find forums that if anyone were to find Because Rex was unable to stop thinking about his 2 deaths, he decided to take a stroll through the streets of the city in order to clear his mind. Additionally, while he was out and about, he happened upon a store that was extremely uncommon and was known as the elusive casino. Instantaneously, he recalled how other players had written on the forums that if anyone were to find out about it at an early stage in the game, they should immediately spend all of their money inside. and despite the fact that Rex had some spare change in his pocket, he made the decision to contest and even sell all of his equipment in order to increase his chances of winning something significant. He was greeted by a lovely lady named Rosilia as he entered, and she provided him with an explanation of all the information that a player needed to know in order to navigate their way around the complex. The token vending machine was the first thing that Rosilia showed him. This was due to the fact that in order to participate in any of the games that were offered within the casino, everyone would require tokens, and the only place to purchase them was at the token vending machine. When one bronze token was purchased, the price was $1,000, and the price of the gold token was $1 million. After that, Rosilia demonstrated to Rex the prize vending machine, which was a place where players could trade their tokens for a variety of random prizes. According to Rosilia, those rewards were not available for purchase in the casino's retail establishment. There were 4 different games available to play at the casino: blackjack, roulette, poker, and roulette. And with that, Rosilia brought an end to her introduction, and before she left, she cautioned Rex that it was forbidden to make use of any magical abilities or items that could be of any assistance. With that being said, Rosilia extended her best wishes for a pleasant day to him. Rex went to the prize vending machine to check out the rewards that were being offered, and when he saw all of the valuable items that he had the opportunity to win, he was completely blown away because each and every one of them was extremely rare. Circula caught a glimpse of him and reflected on the fact that Rex was merely acting as if he were an A-rank adventurer. After some time had passed, he made the decision that he would be participating in a game of roulette. Circula provided an explanation of the game's gameplay, which consisted of fundamental information. When Rex first began, he placed a wager of 1 bronze token on an odd number. Circula explained that his reward would be doubled if he guessed whether the number was odd or even, and if he guessed the exact number, he would earn 36 times more than his initial bet. If he didn't guess the number, he would not receive any reward at all. Now it appeared that after 7 times of betting on odd numbers, Rex was able to win 5 times in total and 4 times in a row, which caused Circula to cheer him on. Circula was pleased with such a performance. It should be noted, however, that her happiness was not without a hidden agenda. It was her intention for him to believe that he had a lot of good fortune, but the reality was that the whole thing was obviously rigged. She managed his winning rates, which she set to 80%, in order to give him the impression that he was fortunate. It was her policy to allow Rex to win whenever he placed a wager of a small number of tokens. This was taken into consideration when the casino was designed, and it was intended to drain the life out of any adventurers who entered it. In Circula's eyes, her customers were both a source of entertainment and sustenance. At the time that Rex placed his subsequent wager, he once again placed 1 bronze token, and right before the roulette wheel began to spin, Rex placed a few more tokens. He asked Circula if she could step away from him because she was distracting him, and she wanted to ask him why he did something like that. However, Rex asked her to step away from him because she was causing him to be distracted. Although Circula retreated, she couldn't help but think that Rex might have been able to see through her petty scheme. She began to suspect him more and more as she continued to think about him, and as she did so, everything began to fall into place as Rex was gaining a significant advantage. Circula pondered the fact that he must have been contemplating the means by which he was going to outwit her. However, despite the fact that she was going to praise him for recognizing her plan, she was going to keep in mind that the very reason she opened her casino was to provide her with entertainment. Circula was completely insane because she had eliminated anyone who might have been aware of that secret. She began to suspect that there was a way for players to learn about her secret due to the fact that she had killed anyone who might have known it. Circula, who was actually a demon, was not going to be able to fool Rex because he was well versed in the game and had acquired all of the necessary information from his previous experiences with it. And it appeared that there was, in fact, a book that was not allowed to be consumed, which revealed all of her secrets. Rex read the book from beginning to end, paying close attention to each and every detail. The book was only distributed to those players who purchased the game when it was first made available to the public. Circula began to experience a great deal of exhaustion as a result of the fact that the casino utilized her magic in order to generate and create the rewards, which included both the tokens and the prizes. She was aware that if she were to generate the amount that Rex had won, she believed that she would most likely pass away as a result of this. Circula yelled at Rex to stop, and she transformed into her demon form in an attempt to provoke him into attacking her. A successful attack would be considered a violation of the rules, and she would be able to kick him out of the game without them having to pay anything. She made an attempt to intimidate him, but Rex was prepared for it because he could see it coming from a mile away. He made the decision that he would simply play some more rounds of roulette using the same strategy that guaranteed him a major prize. Circular was in a state of complete and utter disarray because she had incorrectly described Rex as a third-rate adventurer, despite the fact that he was actually her worst nightmare. In the end, Rex made the decision to leave Circular's elusive casino with all of the rare prizes that Circular had to offer. This decision was made after some time had passed. However, he had already spent all of his money, and when Rad discovered that he had won a significant amount of items and that he had spent all of his money on acquiring them, he simply shut his door. On the morning that followed, Rex's existence in this world was officially marked for the second time. The fact that it was based on one of his all-time favorite games, BNB, was now 100% certain to him. In spite of the fact that he had been successful in rescuing his sister, it appeared that all of the events that had occurred in the game were almost exactly the same. All of that was on top of the fact that the entire world spoke Japanese, which meant that he had no trouble getting around. However, Rex was still unsure of the reason he was reincarnated, and he speculated that it could be because he made the decision to save the girl from the truck. However, he came to the realization that it would be a waste of time to continue thinking about that because he was not going to receive a response. He came to the realization that he would not really want to return to his previous world because there was a great deal of work waiting for him there. Having already come to terms with his life as Rex, and having a deep affection for the world of Brave and Blade, he made the decision to live his life as Rex. Now Rex was of the opinion that he should concentrate his efforts primarily on surviving the 3-year period. This was due to the fact that despite the fact that he had triumphed over the doomed demon, he must not permit himself to relax and believe that he was safe. In order for Rex to actually survive and thrive in that world, he needed to eliminate the special statuses. In order to accomplish this, he needed to find the hero of the game, as each and every instance of the game required a hero to be present. Second, he desired to travel the world in order to gain a better understanding of the ways in which the world actually differed from the game he had previously played and the ways in which it was similar. To be able to triumph over all of the occurrences that were going to take place at some point in the future was the third objective that he had established for himself. Finally, Rex wrote down how he desired to improve his strength, and as he lifted his pen from the journal, he reflected on the fact that he needed to keep that a secret because it could potentially cause a great deal of trouble if it was discovered by anyone, particularly his adversary. Nevertheless, Rosilia awoke, and she moved closer to Rex as she approached. In light of the fact that she had observed his journal and the manner in which he conducted himself, she drew her sword and inquired about his identity, as she was certain that he was not her brother. Although Rex made an effort to calm her down, he quickly realized that he would have to tell her everything. With Rosilia's declaration that she was prepared to listen to his story, Rex revealed to her that he was not the brother she had been accustomed to experiencing. When he told her everything, Rosilia was not actually convinced, and she stated that if they had been to have a trial in the church, he would not have been able to lie because the people from the world of Big Brother were actually unable to lie and make up stories like that. As a result of the fact that she hadn't seen her brother in 10 years, Rosilia revealed to Rex that she had no idea what she was talking about when she said that she didn't know anything about him. She explained that he had left them and become an adventurer, and that she had not learned that he was in a nearby town until the monsters began attacking the city of Ash. She had not heard that he was in a nearby town otherwise. In reality, that was a bluff that Rosilia used to demonstrate that Rex was not actually lying during the conversation. Her explanation was that she had not seen her brother in a very long time, and as a result, she was unable to even determine whether or not another person was inhabiting his body. But she was interested in learning more about it. One thing that Rex was aware of was the movements that her brother made while playing the game. The explanation that Rex provided was that her brother remained by the hero's side for a period of time before departing to pursue his own interests. Nevertheless, that was not the conclusion. During their conversation, he informed her that a body dressed in black could be discovered buried deep within the ruins of Earth City. The fact that he was attending to business most likely meant that he attempted to free the city that had been captured. 2 vials were brought out by Rosilia, and she drank from one of them. She assured Rex that they were not poisonous, which meant that he could actually consume the other one himself. She informed him that it was holy water and that she wanted to make sure that he was not possessed by a demon. Once he did, she told him that she wanted to reassure him. After that, she went on to explain that she was conducting all of the necessary tests on him, and she made the decision that she was going to remain by his side for the time being. Due to the fact that the Torrent family was a family of warriors, she was unable to simply abandon the body of her brother. Since he was unaware of her level of strength, Rex stated that it would be unreasonable for him to anticipate that she would engage in combat. He requested that she demonstrate her status to him, which caused Rosilia to feel a little perplexed because she had never encountered anything similar to that before. Rex eventually came to the conclusion that the individuals within the game were not actually aware of that, and he utilized the appraisal skill on himself. The realization dawned on him that he was, in fact, quite feeble. Normally, players would have their statistics 4 times their level, which means that if a person was level 50, their statistics would be approximately 200. He explained that this was the case, since the statistics of real players began at level 1 with a value of 20. It appeared that Rex was typically weaker than real players. In addition to that, certain individuals have the ability to choose how they would prefer to distribute their stat points, which would actually make them even more powerful. Because he was a character from the game, Rex did not have access to that particular option. Additionally, he mentioned that players were required to make strategic use of their points in order to complete a variety of quests, which was a requirement of the game. If they spent their points in the appropriate manner, then and only then would they be able to accomplish this. When players reached higher levels, they were able to unlock stronger moves, which meant that the players who were already strong would become even stronger, while those who were already weak would become even weaker. That was something that Rex did not particularly enjoy, and he had to reassure Rosilia that everything was fine. However, Rex was so fascinated by her statistics that he couldn't help but use his appraisal skill on her. He couldn't help himself. Although Rosilia was only level 1, her statistics were significantly higher than those of Rex, who was level 50. Rex passed out as a result of seeing that. As soon as he awoke, Rosilia informed him that she had heard about how he had fought to protect Rad and his party, and that she had prepared some porridge for him in order to assist him in recovering more quickly. Rosilia explained that it wasn't a big deal and that she wanted to thank him for saving her life. Rex enjoyed the meal, and she thanked him for saving her. Rex reflected to himself that his approach was actually flawed and that he ought to consider himself to be the hero, given that he was most certainly behaving in a heroic manner. It was clear to him that his function in that world was not that of a hero. However, he entertained the idea that he might be able to instruct a group of people who would be able to eliminate all of the monsters and clear out all of the events. In reality, that was also Rex's job in the game, and he eventually came to terms with the fact that this was his destiny. It was then that he stood up and asked Rosilia to lend him her strength because he desired to have her by his side. As a result, she broke out into a broad smile, indicating that she was extremely content. After Rex complimented her on her strength, Rosilia made the decision to reveal to him the secrets that the Torrent family had been keeping. It appeared as though they had been guarding the royal family for many generations, and their fighting style took advantage of their natural speed as well as their ability to perform wind magic. It was explained by Rosilia that the only arts that she had been granted access to were the hidden arts. The other day, Rex discovered that Rosilia was, in fact, still lacking in strength and had a great deal of knowledge to acquire. It came as a complete surprise to him because he had no prior knowledge of the existence of the hidden arts. The explanation that Rosilia provided was that in order for her to achieve the status of an imperial sword, she would need to improve her strength. After listening to that, Rex understood the reason why Rosilia's statistics were so high. It appeared that she was in possession of the necessary qualifications to be able to change her class into the Imperial Knight's class at a later point in the game. Due to the fact that she typically passes away during one of the game's initial events, Rex found this to be somewhat perplexing. He was at a loss to comprehend the rationale behind the selection of her as the heir to the expertise of the Torrent family. He reasoned to himself that if this was done on purpose, then the developers of the game had purposefully made her the most broken of the side characters. This was something that Rex considered to be a positive development because he believed that if he was successful in training other characters and discovering additional powerful side characters, such as Rosilia, he might be able to put together a powerful army that would be able to win the game. As soon as they arrived at the demi-human meadow, Rosilia immediately began to use her wind magic and swordsmanship skills in order to eliminate a goblin. Although Rex believed that Rosilia was experiencing negative emotions as a result of her killing of a humanoid monster, it appeared that Rosilia was experiencing positive emotions as a result of her killing of the goblin, despite the fact that this behavior was not permitted within the Torrent family. On the other hand, that was not the reason they went there. Rosilia was expressing her regret for acting in such a careless manner, and Rex assured her that there was no need to be concerned because they would have a great deal of additional opportunities to get it right. Considering that Rex's level was only 4, it appeared that he wanted to level her up so that he could observe the rate at which her stats increased between levels. Regardless of how powerful or beneficial a person's starting statistics were, the growth rate of that person was the factor that ultimately determined how much power they could scale. Prior to using his appraisal skill, Rex hoped that Rosilia's growth rate was at least the typical average of 4 stat points per level. This was because Rosilia quickly leveled up, and Rex was thinking that she was doing so. Through the utilization of his appraisal skill, Rex came to the realization that she was even more powerful than the typical player, as her growth rate was significantly higher than the average. Despite the fact that Rex was in a state of shock, he was crying tears of joy because he found out that this would make it much simpler for him to construct a powerful army. They made their way to the town's marketplace, where Rex and Rosilia were waiting. Rex used his appraisal skill to examine the residents, which boosted his self-assurance because he became aware of a large number of people who were less capable than he was. Rosilia observed that he was in a more positive frame of mind. Rex explained that his ability to evaluate people was unique due to the fact that he had come from another world and was able to see everyone's statistics in a clear and concise manner. He made a number of observations and provided an illustration from the perspective of a man dressed as a magician. However, the individual's statistics were all over the place, and it would have been more prudent to invest points in magic and focus. It was explained by Rex that this was the case due to the fact that the abilities and competencies of regular adventurers were randomly assigned. It was for this reason that there were a great number of individuals whose statistics were jumbled in the same manner, and their appearances almost never matched their statistics. As an additional illustration, Rosilia chose a veteran with a level of 34 from among the people who were available in the market. Due to the fact that he was 16 levels below him, Rex experienced some discomfort when he saw his statistics. However, his statistics were quite impressive. It dawned on Rex that he knew he had to be a well-known A-rank adventurer. After taking everything into consideration, Rex came to the conclusion that if he were to provide people with guidance on how to invest their stats in the most effective manner, he could actually enable everyone to become more powerful. There was one more thing that Rex acknowledged, but it was a rather disheartening realization for him because he realized how much weaker he was in comparison to other actual adventurers. He explained that people could learn more about their abilities by asking a fortune teller to evaluate their growth rates. This was a method that was made available to them. The grades ranged from 1 to 6, with 1 being the worst possible and 6 being the best possible. When it comes to normal adventurers, all of their growth rates would typically be somewhere between 3 and 4. As a matter of fact, the majority of them were rated at 4 and 5, with magic being a 2 and agility being a 6 respectively. On the other hand, Rex was completely below average because all of his stats were 1, and the only aptitude he possessed was magic because it had a growth rate of 4. Rex reflected on the fact that his character had a difficult time developing into a skilled swordsman due to the fact that he lacked any natural abilities in either of those areas. For someone who aspired to become a swordsman, the fact that he was talented in only 1 stat was of no particular significance. Taking all of this into consideration, Rex came to the realization that he had 2 choices available to him. The first was to continue training himself so that he could become stronger, and the second was to take a group of people and train them. Both of these plans were successful. He had already made up his mind about what he would do because he believed that it would be a waste of time and resources to continue investing in himself because his growth rates were so poor. On the other hand, Rex was a gamer, and there was a thought that occurred to him that he could begin training himself from scratch in some way. The idea that he could transform himself into a fearless warrior was something that he thought would be really cool. Rex was aware that there was one event that would supply players with the opportunity to reroll their statistics, and despite the fact that it might be very challenging to clear, he was determined to put together a team that would assist him in achieving his objective. His reasons were straightforward. He desired to prevent the destruction of that world, and he desired to alter the course of events that he was aware would ultimately be detrimental to him. He wanted to make that life one in which he could train himself, and that was the primary reason. They happened to come across Rad and the other individuals at that very moment, which caused Rex to break out in a broad grin, and he promptly extended an invitation to them to become his students. While this was going on, people were rushing into the Adventurers Guild because it appeared that an A-rank adventurer was conducting a training session. In a straightforward manner, the individual approached the receptionist and conveyed his desire to instruct a group of young explorers. Immortal Man was the man's nickname throughout his life. Upon the beginning of the lesson, he was thoroughly taken aback by the large number of individuals who had arrived. It had never occurred to him that there would be so many young explorers. Initially, he stated that he was going to instruct everyone on how to improve their strength, and he wished for everyone to disseminate this information to as many people as possible. The very first thing that he wanted to know was whether or not anyone knew what the most important statistic was for reaching the level of an excellent adventurer. It was stated by one individual that power would be the most significant factor. However, the veteran stated that he had something else in mind, despite the fact that this was somewhat accurate. He stated that the most successful explorers always had one thing in common, and that was their unyielding willingness to take risks. He explained that this idea might appear to be a little too straightforward for some people, but what it actually meant was that they had the ability to progress and level up as long as they were still alive. According to him, even though people are weak at the moment, they are still capable of making efforts to improve themselves, and they would actually have a great deal of experience building up inside of them over the course of longer periods of time. According to the man, anyone who was determined enough to succeed could accomplish their objectives and realize their dreams. That portion of the lesson was solely devoted to inspiring the students. Following that, the man wrote down all 6 of the statistics that were displayed on the board, and he also provided an explanation for each of those statistics. Many of the adventurers were unaware of these, despite the fact that they were aware that they became somewhat more powerful as they progressed through the levels. It appeared that various factors, including a person's race and background, had a significant impact on the growth rates. He went on to say that although everyone came from a variety of backgrounds, in order to determine what they were so good at, all they needed to do was examine the skills that came across as being completely natural to them. After that, he went on to discuss the capabilities. He explained that it was a mistake to believe that a swordsman did not require magic, and that a magician did not require strength. He also stated that all of the statistics and abilities were important. Each and every swordsman required magic in order to make use of his arts, and each and every mage required strength in order to equip himself with better and more powerful equipment. It was necessary for him to say that being completely balanced in all of your stats and abilities was not going to transform you into an A-rank adventurer, and that everyone would need to work on their individual strengths. Keeping this in mind, it was also necessary for him to say that. In addition, he mentioned that in order to unlock a unique main ability, individuals needed to improve one of their stats more than the others, and he suggested that everyone improve their agility stats simultaneously. No one had anticipated that he would bring up agility, so everyone was taken aback by his statement. However, he went on to explain that that particular stat had a wide range of applications, and that if it were properly trained and developed, a person would be able to launch multiple attacks before their opponent ever had the opportunity to launch their own attack by themselves. Furthermore, in the event that the conflict took an unexpected turn, the adventurer was now free to flee the scene because no one would be able to catch up to him if his agility was the greater of the two. He explained that even he himself couldn't have known that until it was far too late because he wasn't even close to being quick. The topic of equipment was going to be the very last thing that the man touched on. He conveyed to them a tale about 2 intrepid travelers who were both skilled swordsmen and who embarked on a journey at precisely the same moment. They were nearly identical in terms of their skills, abilities, and statistics. However, one of them possessed an old iron sword, while the other possessed a mithril sword. That was the only difference between them. After entering the same dungeon, they attempted to kill the same monster, but the individual who was armed with the mithril sword was unsuccessful. Despite the fact that mithril swords are not inherently harmful, the fact that the adventurer was not prepared to use it meant that he was unable to properly equip it. As a result, the iron sword was the only one that was able to deal damage to the monster. He went on to say that a true adventurer did not place an excessive amount of importance on the gear that they have. According to his explanation, in order for them to be able to wield and use any weapons of their choosing, they needed to put in a lot of effort. In conclusion, the man delivered a speech that was suitable for the lesson. After providing the young explorers with all of the necessary guidance, he informed them that it was now up to them to decide what they would do on their own. He assured them that as long as they continue to get better and move forward, they will undoubtedly develop into some of the most exciting adventurers in the world. He encouraged them to take pleasure in their life together as explorers, a life that did not take any shortcuts. He went on to say that he was an immortal veteran, so if anyone ever had any difficulties with anything, they could actually approach him without any hesitation. This demonstrates the significance of perseverance, hard work, and a willingness to learn in the process of becoming a successful adventurer if one wishes to achieve their goals. The immortal veteran was the man that Rex had scanned, using his appraisal skill earlier. On the other hand, Rex decided to join the Adventurers Guild and proceed with the same actions. The receptionist was informed that he would be conducting a training session in the near future. When Rad suggested that he find some other adventurers, Rex told him that he wasn't going to do that because his lecture wasn't going to be a colorful one. This was due to the fact that the lecture room was already occupied by the immortal veteran. When Rad responded with unrelenting heart, Rex laughed at him. He started by asking them the same question, and they all responded in the same way. His explanation was that despite the fact that there could be a number of answers that were correct to that question, in his humble opinion, the only thing that was correct was efficiency. He explained that everyone always said that you just needed to work hard, but if you were already weaker than someone else and both of you worked hard, then that logic doesn't make sense. He said that everyone always said that you just needed to work hard. Once Rex informed them that he was not going to waste their time, he proceeded to jot down the 6 statistics that each individual possessed. In his explanation, he stated that the race of an individual did not really matter to an ordinary adventurer because individuals could still choose to become powerful if they followed their capacities. It was explained by Rex that if you were to increase all of your stats, you would become ordinary. He also explained that the most important thing that everyone needed to do was to get rid of the stats that were not useful to them. Rex explained that there are no such things as unnecessary abilities, and he stated that the one that no one actually needed was agility, which was the complete opposite of what the immortal veteran told in his lesson. Nuku stated that even warriors needed magic in order to use their arts. Rex also stated that there are no such things as unnecessary abilities. Despite the fact that speed was useful in battles, Rex explained that leveling up that stat was a trap because agility could quickly reach its peak, which is essentially a hard cap. Rad couldn't believe that Rex had chosen that stat out of all the others. Rex explained that putting more than 150 stat points into agility would be a complete waste of time because after that point, there would be no significant change. He then continued to instruct them on the various pieces of equipment, and he asked Rad which sword would be the most effective. Rad responded by stating that the orichalcum sword would be the most effective, as it was the most powerful of the 3. On the other hand, Rex advised him that a straightforward iron sword would be more suitable for him because he needed to improve his statistics in order to make use of equipment that was more powerful and robust. Nuku explained that she had read something about that, and Rex mentioned that the limitation of the equipment was also a factor. They were informed that each weapon possessed a fixed attacking power that remained the same regardless of who wielded it, and that each weapon also possessed a variable attack power that varied according to the person who wielded it respectively. As a result of this, it would be beneficial for beginners to use equipment that they are capable of handling, and they should select their equipment based on their current levels and their capabilities. They should always keep in mind that they wanted to be the best, and because of this, they should never stop thinking about how they could improve. This is something that Rex told them to keep in their minds at all times. Rad inquired about the process of leveling up. Rex explained to them that leveling up was essential, but that it also contained a trap. Normally, adventurers would believe that if they made the abilities they didn't use stronger, they would be stronger in return. However, this was not the case. Rex explained that the situation was not like that. Rex explained to him that the level system was governed by stringent regulations, and that the more advanced an adventurer or individual was, the more difficult it would be for them to advance in level. As a means of simplifying the concept for them, Rex explained that it would be ideal if they were able to kill a monster that was of a higher level than they were, as this would bring them a great deal of experience. But what if the situation was the opposite of what you expected? In the event that they were unable to accomplish this, they would be forced to engage in combat with lower-level monsters, which would not provide them with sufficient experience points. That meant that even if they pushed themselves to their absolute limits, there would be no result regardless of how hard they had tried. This was the snare he set. When adventurers reached a point where they were unable to defeat monsters of the same level, the game effectively ended for them. Rex yelled out that they needed to shake the notion that everything would be fine if they continued to level up. He said that they needed to forget about that idea. In light of the fact that this was the most important thing, he advised them to give serious consideration to the possibility of investing their stat points. People who were able to make intelligent use of their points would have an easier time killing and defeating monsters, while others would have a difficult time doing so. While they were fighting against demons and monsters, Rex informed them that they had to do more than that. It was the image of their ideal self that was their primary adversary. When compared to the lesson that the immortal veteran had taught, his lesson was entirely different. In addition to informing Rad and the others that adventurers were not free, he advised them to always look for the simplest way to complete a task. All that would be necessary for them to achieve success is to think. Whenever Rex was saying all of that, each and every one of them was terrified. By the time he was finished, he had scared them by telling them that he would be watching over their actions and decisions. The others, including Rad, were utterly and completely devastated. Despite the fact that Rex was aware that he might have gone a little bit overboard, he was determined to convey to them that their world was not actually a pleasant place to live. Due to the fact that he had played the game for an incalculable number of hours, Rex was the person who had the most experience available in the world of BNB. He was aware of the fact that the experience system was not particularly impressive in the beginning stages of the game. All individuals, including adventurers with low growth rates, had the potential to advance very quickly. However, as the game progressed, those adventurers frequently encountered difficulties because they were unable to keep up with their contemporaries of the same age. There would come a point in time when they would reach a plateau, which would essentially mean that the game was over for them. When compared to them, the adventurers who had high growth rates would have a difficult time getting started. On the other hand, if they were successful in surviving, they would become extremely powerful once they reached the conclusion of the game. As Rex was aware of the fact that they were unable to view their own statistics, he pondered the process by which they chose the role that they were going to play. With a sword in his hand, Rad shared that he had always envisioned himself as a hero. It was explained by Nuku that she had never been athletic, which is why she decided to become a mage. As far as Pla was concerned, the most advantageous thing would be to be an archer. By explaining that she would never be able to wield a sword, Mana explained that she made the decision to remain in the backline and provide support and healing to those who needed it. It was impossible for them to have done a better job, so Rex had no expectations of anything else from them. When he called their names, he informed them that he was going to check their statistics and that they could come up to him and check them out. He mentioned that he was going to scan them. They appeared to be a little perplexed, and he explained to them that he was able to evaluate their capabilities based on numerical values. They were completely taken aback by that. The first one was Rad, and after doing some homework, Rex was finally able to determine the growth rates of himself and the other people. While Rex's total was only 9, Rad's total growth rate was 22, and he had the ideal statistics for a powerful warrior. In contrast, Rex's total was only 9. After that, Nuku came up, and her total was 21. The fact that her magic growth rate was 5 made her an ideal candidate for the role of a mage. The next person to arrive was Mana, and her total was also 21. She had a growth rate of 5 for both her strength and her agility, making her an ideal candidate for the role of a healer. During the time that they were commenting and discussing their statistics, Rex checked Plana's statistics simultaneously. As soon as he saw that she had a single growth rate of 6, he was completely taken aback because that was the best possible growth rate that one could have. With a total of 22, she was an ideal candidate for the role of an archer. As a result of Rex's shock, he was under the impression that she was actually cheating. Rex was somewhat intimidated by Plana's question, which inquired as to whether or not she was going to be of any use. After making the announcement that he was going to explain everything to everyone, he began by stating that he was more than pleased with the outcomes of the situation. He explained that none of them could actually be the hero because the hero stats were completely off the charts and they couldn't be compared to a typical adventurer. Despite the fact that all of their stats were significantly better than his, he explained that nothing could be the hero. Even though none of them had a growth rate of at least 25%, Rex was determined to make them the most powerful adventurer party in the world. A hero would have a growth rate of at least 25% of their total. The thought occurred to him that despite the fact that none of them were the hero he was searching for, he was going to make them more powerful than any heroes that were currently in existence. Rex asked them if they were willing to listen to him and train in accordance with what he instructed them to do because they had been silent for a considerable amount of time. As soon as they heard him, they began to cheer him on and express their support for him. Following the hearing of that, Rex informed them that their first order was that they were not permitted to engage in combat for a period of 1 month. This completely astonished them, and it made them lose all of their enthusiasm.